Studies Section 8, Microeconomic Policy in an Open Economy. Introduction. In the previous lectures, we examined the effect of devaluation on current account balance. We discovered that the effect depends on the economic policies accompanying devaluation. This implies that macroeconomic policies go a long way to determine how devaluation will affect current account. On the other hand, changes in macroeconomic policies also affect other macroeconomic aggregates. For example, the government may intend to use expansionary policies to raise employment without considering their effect on current account balance. In particular, when an economy is open, the authority should think of how to maintain appropriate balance in its current account when pursuing full employment or reduction in inflation. In this lecture, we examine the implication of changing macroeconomic policies, fiscal and monetary, in the context of exchange rate policy on macroeconomic equilibrium. We begin by first discussing policies of full employment and low inflation coexisting with policies for ensuring current account balance. We later establish the number of instruments needed to achieve a number of targets. Thereafter, we discuss the Mundell-Fleming ISLMPP framework, which we shall use to examine the effect of devaluation on the economy in the next chapter. Objective. At the end of this lecture, the student must be able to do the following: understand what is meant by internal and external balance, explain the SWMA diagram, articulate the Mundell-Fleming framework, use the framework to answer some questions relating to devaluation and current account balance. The internal and external balance. Between 1948 and 1973, all countries adopted fixed exchange rate, and the authorities need to worry about how monetary and fiscal policies affect the economy. The primary goal of macroeconomic policy is how to attain full employment and also control inflation. The achievement of this goal is regarded as the attainment of internal balance. When the authority is committed to achieving internal balance in an open economy, output expansion tends to have implications for the balance of payments. For instance, when the authorities pursue expansionary fiscal or monetary stance in order to move the economy to its full employment position, income tends to increase, and when income increases, expenditure on imports increases as well. With export fixed, current account will deteriorate. When exchange rate is fixed, the big problem is how to achieve balance of payment equilibrium and the balance between supply and demand for the domestic currency in the foreign exchange market. The problem of ascertaining balance of payments equilibrium is called achievement of external balance. When the authority is using fiscal or monetary policy or both to affect the economy to achieve full employment and stable price level, we say the authority is adopting expenditure changing policy. On the other hand, if when the authority uses devaluation, revaluation of the exchange rate to influence the composition of spending between domestic and foreign goods, either to discourage import spending or increase it, the authorities are adopting expenditure switching policy. In about 4 to 5 decades ago, the problem of how to achieve both the internal balance and external balance simultaneously occupied the minds of researchers and policymakers. The first economist that attempted to provide solution to this problem was Trevor Swan in 1955. Trevor used the idea of absorption and changes in exchange rate to analyze how an economy can achieve both internal and external balance simultaneously. The analysis is presented in what is called the Swan diagram, figure 8.1. The vertical axis presents the exchange rate naira to dollar. Increase in exchange rate means depreciation, while decrease means appreciation. The horizontal axis shows the amount of absorption or domestic spending, C plus I plus G. The internal balance, IB curve, shows the combination of exchange rate and domestic absorption for which the economy is in internal balance. The curve slopes downwards from left to right because when exchange rate appreciates, exports become expensive and imports become cheaper. To maintain full employment, domestic expenditure has to rise. Points to the right of IB curve indicates pressure on price level to rise inflation because at a given exchange rate such as R1 producing point F or R2 producing point B, total absorption is greater than national income or vice versa required for full employment. To the left of IB, say point C, there will be pressure on price level to fall leading to unemployment because domestic absorption is less than income or vice versa required for full employment. The external balance EB curve shows the combination of exchange rate and absorption for which the economy is in external balance. This curve is upward sloping from left to right because increase in exchange rate depreciation increases export demand and decreases import demand. This may lead to current account surplus disequilibrium. Thus, to prevent surplus current account, domestic absorption has to increase. To the right of external balance AB curve is point like B in which absorption greater than what is required to maintain current account equilibrium, and so the current account slumps to deficit. However, to the left of external balance, point like G, current account is in surplus because the domestic absorption is less than what is required for current account balance. Following this analysis, we can divide the graph into 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1, a deficit and inflationary. Quadrant 2, a deficit and deflationary unemployment. Quadrant 3, a surplus and inflationary. Quadrant 4, a surplus and deflationary unemployment. Note that when the economy is experiencing deflation, we assume that there is unemployment. Point A indicates where the economy achieves both internal and external balance because at that point, the IB curve intersects the EB curve. Supposing that the economy is not at point A, but at say point B, the economy must be suffering from inflationary pressure and current account deficit. Suppose the authority maintains fixed exchange rate and intends to reduce current account deficit by reducing domestic absorption, adopting expenditure switching policy. If they had the best guess and get the policy right, the economy will move from point B to point C. At point C, the economy is to the left of internal balance IB curve, which is an indication that the economy is experiencing recession unemployment. Hence, using expenditure switching policy alone, external balance could be attained but at the expense of attainment of internal balance. The authority may alternatively tackle current account deficit by devaluing its currency. If they got the devaluation correctly, the economy would move from point P to point F, where current account deficit is eliminated but there is inflation. Thus, using this policy alone, the authority will achieve external balance only. The key lesson from this simple model is that it is hardly possible to use only one policy instrument, either fiscal expansion or devaluation, to achieve 2 targets IB and EB. Thus, to move from point B to point A, the authorities need to reduce domestic absorption, deflate the economy, and also embark on devaluation by appropriate amount. The reduction in absorption will control inflation and devaluation will improve current account balance so that the 2 targets can be achieved. This implies that a country needs as many instruments as the number of targets it has. In fact, Tinbergen J. 1952 won a Nobel Prize on this proposition, and so it is called Tinbergen Instrument Target Rule. Although Swan diagram provides conceptual framework for economic policy analysis and discussion, it is too simplistic because the economic relationship is not explicitly defined. Also, the analysis assumes that the authorities have a good guess about the amount of contraction and level of devaluation that will move the economy from point like B to A. This is not easy in true life situation. Again, the analysis omitted the importance of capital movement. Finally, it does not show the distinction between monetary policy and fiscal policy as measures of influencing aggregate demand and income in the economy. This led to the emergence of Mundell-Fleming model, which addresses some of these issues, and this is discussed in what follows. The Mundell-Fleming model. Note that in all the analysis of balance of payment disequilibrium discussed so far, none examined the issue of capital flow, an important component of balance of payment. Mundell R. 1962 and J. Fleming 1962 in a separate paper incorporated internal movement of capital into the former macroeconomic equilibrium models using Keynesian ISLM framework. Their papers show the implication of using fiscal and monetary policies to ascertain external and internal balance. Before examining the effect of monetary and fiscal policies on the open macroeconomy, it is important to first derive the ISLM-BP framework. Derivation of IS schedule in an open economy. IS schedule for an open economy shows various combinations of the level of output Y and interest rate R that make leakage T plus S plus M equals injection G plus I plus X. Given the national income identity Y is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M in bracket, the leakage and injection is given as T plus X plus M is equal to I plus G plus X, where T is taxes, S is domestic saving, M is imports, G represents government final spending, I and X stand for private investment and exports respectively. In the Keynesian spirit, X is equal to S0 plus S1Y, that is, saving contains an autonomous and induced component. The induced component S1 is positive, implying that saving is an increasing function of income. Also, import function is given as M is equal to M0 plus M1Y, where all the terms are as defined earlier. It is expected, a priori, that investment is a function of interest rate. High interest rate will reduce investment, while low interest rate will raise investment. That is, I is equal to I into bracket R, which the IDR is equal to less than 0. Finally, export X is purely exogenous given the reasons stated in chapter 3. The first quadrant shows the relationship between leakages T plus S plus M and income. It is upward sloping because for any increased income, taxes, saving and import will increase. The slope is given by T plus S plus M less than 1. At income level Y1, total leakage will be L1, and as income rises to Y2, we expect leakage to rise from L1 to L2. The volume of leakage is transferred to quadrant 2. This line is a 45-degree line, implying that the amount of leakage is equal to injection. Thus, the amount of leakage L1 corresponds to injection J1, while the amount of leakage L2 corresponds to injection J2. Quadrant 3 shows the relationship between investment R and injection given the price level. The injection schedule is downward sloping from left to right because investment is inversely related to interest rate, while government expenditure and export are assumed to be independent of interest rate. If the level of income at Y1 generates equality between leakages L1 and J1, then the interest rate that will engender equality between leakages L1 and injection J1 will be R1. If income rises to Y2 and leakage increases to L2, then for leakage to be equal to injection, interest rate must fall to R2. Thus, quadrant 4 shows a point on the IS curve for an open economy where the level of output Y corresponds to the level of interest rate. For example, at Y1, the level of interest rate for which leakage is equal to injection is R1. If income increases to Y2, the appropriate interest rate will be R2. We have many income gradations and its associated interest rate. If we join the points at which level of income is consistent with given interest rate, we arrive at IS relation given in quadrant 4 for an open. This curve is downward sloping from left to right in the income interest rate space. The summary of the relationship can be shown symbolically as follows. Derivation of the LM curve. The LM schedule shows various combinations of the level of income and interest rate for which the money sector is at equilibrium, that is, for which money demand equals to money supply. Economic agents demand for money because of three important reasons: to carry out present transactions, purchase of goods and services, to carry out anticipated transactions, and to capture the gains from interest rate changes. The first two can be lumped up to one since the purpose is specifically for transaction. By assumption, when income increases, we expect transactions by economic agent to increase. That is, transaction component of money demand is an increasing function of income. MR is equal to M1 into bracket Y. Any money balances held in excess of transaction balance is for speculative purpose. If interest rate increases, the opportunity cost of holding money rises, and this means less demand for transaction balance. Demand for speculative purpose rises as income rises. This means that there is a negative relationship between interest rate and speculative demand. This relation is stated symbolically in equation 8.2. Since money demand comprises transaction and speculative demand, then total money demand is as follows. The equilibrium in the money market requires that money demand MD equals money supply MS, that is, MD is equal to MS. Substituting equations 8.2 and 8.3 into 8.4, the equilibrium in the money market is described by equation 8.5. Quadrant 1 shows transactional balance as a positive function of Y. Equation 8.2, when income increases from Y0 to Y1, transactional money balances rose from MR0 to MR1. Quadrant 2 shows the distribution of fixed money supply between transactional money balance and speculative money balance. Equation 8.5. Distance D to MRP measures the amount of money in the economy. If 0 minus MTO is held as transactional balance, 0 minus MSP0 will be held as speculative balance. In quadrant 3, the relationship between speculative money balance and interest rate is shown. Equation 8.2, the graph shows that at speculative balance, MSPO are willingly held. This set of information is enough to show that at I0 and Y0, money demand comprising transactional and speculative balances will equal to money supply. If interest rate increases from I0 to I1, speculative demand will fall, and this will necessarily imply that transactional demand will rise, and as we see, there is a positive relationship between income and transactional money balances. This implies that transactional money demand MT1 will be required for cash when the income level is Y1. At interest rate I1, income Y1 is greater than income Y0. If we join the points of intersection where money demand is equal to money supply, we obtain the LM schedule. The LM schedule is upward sloping from left to right because high income leads to high transaction balance, which for a given money supply can only be drawn out of speculative balances by a relatively high interest rate. The balance of payment BP schedule. The BP schedule shows different combination of interest rate and income that is compatible with equilibrium balance of payments. The balance of payments is divided into two, the current account CA and the capital account KA. Factors responsible for export demand is external, which implies that export is independent of domestic income and interest rate. Import are an increasing function of domestic income, that is, M is equal to M0 plus M1Y. To maintain external balance, that is, to ensure equality between inflow and outflow or supply of currency and demand for currency, authority needs not intervene either by selling or by buying currency. It is expected that any deficit in the current account will be offset by corresponding capital account balance surplus. Conversely, for any current account surplus, there must be a corresponding current capital account deficit. If this is true, then current account deficit does not call for authority to draw down reserves given that CA is equal to X minus M. We know that if income rises, import will increase and current account will move to deficit if the domestic interest rate rises relative to foreign country. Foreigners will tend to save their money, increase their saving portfolio in the domestic banks. For instance, if Naira annualized interest rate rises relative to foreigners will choose to increase their saving in Nigeria banks. Increase in foreign saving with domestic banks is a form of capital inflow. Conversely, if the domestic interest rate of Naira, say, is lower relative to foreign, Nigerians will tend to increase their saving portfolio in the foreign banks. Such process will amount to capital outflow. Thus, when domestic interest rate rises, it leads to more capital inflow, and when it falls, it leads to more capital outflow. Hence, capital flows is a function of interest rate. That is, balance of payment will be in equilibrium when the deficit in the current account is just equal to the surplus in the capital account, or when export volume is equal to the difference between import and capital flow. Symbolically, the equilibrium balance of payment requires that, with this set of information, it is possible to examine the relationship between income and interest rate in the foreign exchange market. Quadrant 1 shows the relationship between current account and income. It slopes downward from left to right. This is because when income rises, import will rise, and this leads to current account deficit. If income falls, import will fall and current account will improve. Move to surplus in figure 8.3. Income level Y0 is less than income level Y1, and that is the reason why the current account is in surplus. Quadrant 2 shows how the current account deficit surplus is transferred to equivalent capital account surplus deficit. The line is a 45-degree indicating that any deficit will be matched with corresponding surplus. That is, when current account is in deficit, capital account must be in corresponding surplus. The larger the size of the current account deficit, the larger will be the size of capital account surplus. The larger the size of current account surplus, larger will be the size of capital account deficit. Hence, there is a positive relationship between current account position and capital account position. The larger the deficit of one, the larger the surplus of the other. Equation 8.7. Quadrant 3 describes the appropriate interest rate required for a given level of capital flow. This curve is downward sloping because if interest rate is high, it will lead to increase in capital inflow, and if it falls, it will lead to capital outflow. For the economy to have K0 amount of capital flow, interest rate must fall as much as I0. Once interest rate rises, say to I1, capital will flow in, and the amount of capital inflow will be K1 in equation 4. The relationship between income and interest rate is shown. Note that at Y0 level of income, current account is in surplus, and for the balance of payment to be at equilibrium, capital account must correspondingly be in deficit, capital outflow. The amount of capital outflow that will offset the current account surplus is K0, and the interest rate that will guarantee this amount of outflow is I0. Thus, for balance of payments to be at equilibrium, when current account is in deficit, a given interest rate must be required for a corresponding capital inflow that will offset the deficit. In quadrant 4, Y0 is associated with current account surplus, which must lead to a corresponding capital outflow amounting to K0 made possible by interest rate I0. When current account is in deficit at C1, it must be the case that capital account will be in surplus through inflow made possible by high interest rate I1. Various income Y will be associated with corresponding interest rate I. If all the points for at which income is associated with interest rate for which exchange rate market is at equilibrium, we produce balance of payments BP curve. The BP curve is upward sloping because increase in income will lead to current account deficit, and to restore equilibrium in the balance of payment, capital account must be in surplus, and to attract capital inflow, interest rate must be sufficiently high. The summary of the relationship between interest rate and income in the balance of payments equilibrium is summarized below. Arrow upward Y implies CA deficit, implies arrow upward capital inflow K made possible by arrow upward I. Every point on the BP curve shows a combination of domestic income and interest rate for which balance of payments is in equilibrium. Points to the left of BP curve implies current account surplus. This is because given an amount of capital inflow, current account is more than required for equilibrium as the income level Y is lower. Conversely, to the right of BP curve, the overall balance of payments is in deficit because the level of income is higher than required for equilibrium balance of payments. One important thing to note is that the slope of the BP curve is determined by the degree with which capital is mobile. The higher the degree, the flatter the BP curve becomes, because for a given increase in the level of income, current account will be in deficit. If the degree of capital mobility is high, it requires just very small increase in interest rate for capital to flow in order to achieve equilibrium. When capital is perfectly mobile, any marginal increase in interest rate will lead to very large capital inflow, and this makes BP curve to be horizontal. When capital flow is perfectly immobile, no amount of interest rate increase, decrease will lead to capital inflow, outflow at the level of income that ensures current account balance. In this case, the BP curve will be vertical between the two extremes. Capital should be imperfectly mobile. Now, we have described the workings of the three markets: the goods market, the financial market, and the balance of payments foreign exchange market. It is possible to superimpose the three curves so as to find the level of income and interest rate that will ascertain equilibrium in the three markets simultaneously. This is presented in figure 8.5. At equilibrium, all the three curves pass through a common point E, which corresponds to the interest rate and income level for which equilibrium is attained in the three markets. Note that the level of equilibrium income is less than the full employment income. This is to show that even when the whole economy is at equilibrium, determined by interest rate, the balance of payments BP schedule, there is unemployment, an indication that the economy is not internally balanced even though the BP is in equilibrium. This is because of Y. Planned leakage would exceed planned injection, and this leads to accumulation of inventory leading to decrease in income. Factors shifting IS, LM and BP schedules. The factors that can lead to a shift in IS curve can be categorized into two. First, the factor leading to injection, and second, the factor leading to leakages. Factors leading to injection are the exogenous factors like private investment I, government spending G, and export X. Increase in any of these injections will lead to increase in income, induce a matching leakage in the form of saving S, imports M, and taxes T. Thus, increase in any of these components will shift the IS curve to the right. Decrease in the leakages, SAT autonomous savings S0, import M, and taxes T will lead to rightward shift of the IS curve because each case will induce income, induce more saving, and hence more investment so as to maintain equilibrium. Depreciation or devaluation of exchange rate can cause a rightward shift of the IS curve provided the ML condition holds. If this is true, then devaluation will increase imports, increase export, and hence increase injection for equilibrium. To note, leakage in form of import must rise. Factors shifting the LM curve include money supply. For a given interest rate, increase in money supply increase income level, and this increases transactional money balances. And this leads to a downward shift of the LM curve, thereby mounting pressure on interest rate to fall. Another factor that shifts LM curve is changes in exchange rate. If exchange rate rises, it will lead to increase in the general price level, and this will call for increase in money demand, which can be eliminated by decrease in transactional money balances, leading to upward shift of the LM curve and decrease in income. In the case of BP curve, export, the autonomous items of import, and the exchange rate are the factors shifting the curve. When exports rise or imports fall, current account will improve, and this will shift the BP curve downwards, thereby increasing income level. When exchange rate rises, export will rise and import will fall. We can use this newly developed toolkit, the ISLM-BP curve, to address some key issues in the open economy macroeconomic policies. Study section summary. It will be incomplete if the effect of devaluation is examined on the economy without considering how macroeconomic policies such as fiscal and monetary policies are brought into the picture. In an open economy, the task faced by the authorities is how to achieve both internal and external balances. Internal balance has to do with ensuring stable price level and full employment. External balance has to do with how to maintain equilibrium balance of payment, in which case current account is equal to capital account. When the authority is using either fiscal or monetary or both to achieve internal balance, the authority is adopting expenditure changing policy. When the authority uses exchange rate policy, say devaluation or revaluation, to change the consumption pattern of the economic agent, it is adopting expenditure switching policy. The authority needed as many policy instruments as it has policy targets. If the authority intends to achieve both internal and external balance, neither fiscal policy nor exchange rate policy nor monetary policy only can achieve it. The model-framing macroeconomic model incorporated international factor movement into the former macroeconomic models on the argument that if an economy is open, it is impossible to use ISLM framework only to attain equilibrium because capital flow is absent from the analysis of ISLM. IS schedule is the locus of all points that connect level of interest rate that is consistent with a given level of income for which the product market is at equilibrium. The IS curve is downward sloping. Factors shifting IS curve includes all autonomous variables in the national income identities I, G, T, and exchange rate. LM curve is a locus of all points that connect the level of interest rate that is consistent with a certain level of income for which money market is at equilibrium. The curve is positively sloping. Factors shifting LM curve include money supply and exchange rate. BP curve is a locus of all points that connect the level of interest rate consistent with various level of income for which current account equal to capital account. This curve is upward sloping. Factors shifting BP curve include export, import, and exchange rate. The equilibrium of the system gives a given interest rate that is consistent with level of income that leaves the economy at equilibrium. At this equilibrium, there exists element of unemployment. This is the end of study section 8. Thanks for listening.